All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Ann with the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy. I just want to wish everyone a happy Pride Month and also happy Juneteenth, everyone. So, thank you for joining us for our monthly office hour series. Here, we invite successful and inspiring entrepreneurs and leaders to share their stories and the lessons they've learned along the way. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy is a platform that empowers creative entrepreneurs like yourselves to build sustainable businesses around your art. And we achieve this through our three pillars that include mentoring, training, and community. Since launching our platform globally this year, we were recently honored by Fast Company for their 2021 World Changing Ideas list. And you can learn more about the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy offerings at parsonsentrepreneur.com. All right, so for today's conversation, we are going to be talking about the winding path of entrepreneurship. And as many of you watching are well aware of, in entrepreneurship, success often stands on the foundation of the lessons that you learn from past failures, the willingness to take risks and start something new, and also the level of grit that you need to keep you going. So today, I'm happy to have our guest who's joining us today because I think she embodies all of these things that I just mentioned with her inspiring story. So we're honored to be joined by Arlan Hamilton. So Arlan is the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital, which is a venture capital firm dedicated to minimizing funding disparities in tech by investing in high potential founders who are people of color, women, and or LGBT+. Starting from scratch in 2015, Backstage has now raised more than $20 million and invested in almost 200 startup companies led by underestimated founders. Amazing. Arlan is also the author of It's About Damn Time and hosts a popular podcast called Your First Million. Arlan has been featured on the cover of Fast Company magazine as the first Black woman non-celebrity to do so. Before we jump into the conversation, I'd like to fill you all in. So today we are going to be giving out copies of Arlan's book, It's About Damn Time. So in order to be eligible for a copy of the book, you have to be a network member. It's free to sign up and it's currently open. We'll come back later on and fill you all in on how you can sign up for the network and get a copy of the book. So I'm gonna chat with Arlan for about 30 to 35 minutes. Then I'm gonna fill you in on how you can get a copy of the book. And then we'll cut to Q&A so you have time to engage with Arlan. So on that note, I would like to welcome Arlan. Hey, Arlan.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So jumping right into things, speaking about the winding path of entrepreneurship, here you are, Arlan Hamilton, known for being a change agent and venture capitalist in the tech space. But before you got to this stage, you had a winding path. So could you give us a quick snapshot of what your path was like leading up to you becoming a venture capitalist, founder of Backstage Capital?
Yes, it was absolutely winding path. I never set out to be a venture capitalist. I really like the venture catalyst title I was given by Fast Company, even more so. Well, I've been an entrepreneur since the third grade because I started as the candy lady of the third grade. I sold candy at retail. I bought it at wholesale. And from that moment, I've been kind of, in that entrepreneur mindset. But it was in my 20s, I started working with indie musicians, like really, really indie musicians on their tours to book them shows, taught myself how to book complete tours in some cases. And then I went on tour with them as their tour manager. So I've been around creatives a lot. And I see some of the pain points there, and it's just great that you all have this, because I know a lot of those artists would have loved this back then. I also started my own music magazine. It started out as a music magazine for a few years. It then morphed into a magazine for the LGBTQ community. And it was always indie, but it was just very beautiful and well shot and well read and all of those things. And that kind of was my mid to late 20s that challenged me in ways I can still, have to describe over time. It's part of the reason I wrote the book, because it was there was so much involved in that, so many learnings, of course, and really helped set me up for what I do today. I also worked for several years as a production coordinator, production assistant, and tour and road manager for several musicians. So after the indie days, after the magazine, I then went on to work with more established artists and artists that were signed to labels and more household names, and different contexts. So it's been all over the map. And then in my early 30s, so I'm 40 now, my early 30s, I started learning about Silicon Valley and startups and tech and all of that. And I wanted to start a company that was a tech company, because I thought, wow, this is really great. This is like a kind of a leveling ground, and or leveling field. Anybody can start a company, almost anybody can start one. But then I learned more and more about the disparities in funding for anyone who wasn't a white man in the United States. They were getting 90% of funding in a country where they make up less than a third of the country. And so I thought, well, I can try to raise money, but I want to learn everything I can. I want to learn what founders need outside of money. I want to help them get the money if they do need outside capital. So I just started putting together what is now known as Backstage Capital. And that's the fund that has gone on to invest in, I think we're at 188 companies now. So we're almost to the 200 mark.
That's amazing. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I found what I thought was really interesting and inspiring for a lot of people to learn more about is, the way that you took a risk and stepped into a lane that was completely foreign to you. And you didn't let that stop you from going for this mission or this calling that you felt to, stand up for underrepresented founders. Can you tell us about the self-education process that you went through? You didn't ask for permission. You went out and you got this started, but tell us about the self-education process.
Yes, definitely. The first chapter of my book, after the intro, talks about becoming money when you don't have any. And the way that I think you become money is by taking in as much information as you possibly can and becoming expert in your field or on a topic that you want to learn about. Because there are people who have money who want that information, they don't have it. So what I did was I guess I didn't mention this, but I was broke this whole time, all of it that I described, including up until 35 years old. I didn't make more than $20,000 a year in salary. Many times I was on food stamps or unemployment, and that was a good day if I could get that. And so while I did have these wonderful creative exercises, they weren't paying the bills. And I think so many people here can relate to that. But I didn't want I didn't want that to be the rest of my life. And so starting in my early 30s, once I decided I'm going to start a fund, I just devoured information, videos, back then podcasts were getting more started. So there weren't as many podcasts, but I would listen to anything I could find, any interviews I could find with people who had been down a path, and maybe they didn't look like me, but they had, they were in the industry and I was learning from them. I read every book I could get my hands on, including when I couldn't afford a book, I would go and sit at the Barnes and Noble or Borders for hours at a time and just read the book through that, or pick up magazines, online learning, anything I could get my hands on. I was crafting this, what turned into almost a 4-year homeschool university, really. And so I've always been really drawn to creating an education for yourself and not necessarily having to go a very traditional path in order to be legitimate and to know your stuff. And so there have been times where there have been people who've gone traditional routes to venture capital who've met with me. And I remember one woman had just finished her MBA at Stanford, and I didn't go to college at all, even when I was younger. And she said that in our 1 hour conversation, she learned more than she did in her MBA for the whole time. And it's because I just spent so much time not waiting for permission, not waiting for my turn. Because if you wait for your turn, it'll never come, in my opinion. I just took it. I said, I deserve to be there just as much as anybody else. We all do. And I wanted to know my stuff. I wanted to know what I was talking about. And I wanted to really understand not only what other people were going through, but what I might be going through soon.
So looking at the self-education process and you taking the initiative to educate yourself, the more you know, the more confident you are stepping into a situation. So the next part of it is, the network or lack thereof. There are a lot of people who think that, they're not ready to start something because not only do they, not have, they don't think they have the right credentials, but they also don't think they have the network or the connections to do it. But that's also something else that you weren't afraid to tackle. Like you went after, the best of the best or the biggest names in the tech VC world, whether it's like Sam, reaching out to Sam Altman's brother or, going up to Chris Sacca at a conference. Can you, talk about your strategy to networking in this new field? Like what did you do to get the attention of the biggest players in the field? And how would you advise people approach, building a network from scratch?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think of it too much as networking. I think about it as building networks. And so even when I was broke, even when I was in Texas, had no Silicon Valley connections, all of that, what I was doing was building network. And what I would do is, you have to be patient, first of all. You have to know that it's not going to happen overnight, and you're not going to have this sort of instant gratification of meeting somebody and something instantly happens, especially when you're thinking about fundraising or getting a job or getting that gig. So what I did was I just had the foresight to say, one day I'll be in the financial position I want to be in and I'll have more power and leverage, but right now I don't. So what can I do? What do I have? Well, I have other talents. I have the ability to talk to people, to find out what people need and maybe start matching, that game where you turn over one card and then you turn over other cards and you try to match those cards on the table. Like I used to love that game. And so I just started doing that in real life. And as I met people, whether it was online, or over the phone, in person, no matter what the industry was, it wasn't always on the nose, right? It wasn't always about venture startups. But as I met people, I would just start thinking about how can I be helpful to them? Is there something that they need? Everybody needs something, even if they're rich. Is there something, some piece of information, some access, some ideas or anything, some talent that someone else needs that I know is over here in my other side of my network that I can connect? So I started making connections for people and letting that just simmer, not having anything very specific in mind with it. And the more I did that, the stronger the network became. And it might have taken 3 years. It may take 7 years. It may take a year for someone who I did that for me to say, oh, actually, I think they may know how to help me with this problem, and I'll get in touch with them, right? And it's never about, just necessarily equal. It all comes back to you. So that was a major key for me, was like not waiting until I was in power or waiting till I had money to start networking, or having network, I should say. I don't really like going to events and kind of going around and networking. I like, talking to one or two people and really having a deeper conversation with at a place. So if you go to these conferences or if you're in a virtual conference, it's not about like how many people can I get my business card to. It's about, can I make a connection that actually lasts? Like the next year, do I know that person still? Those are really important, those deep dives with people. And just kind of wielding that and being about, people first, knowing that this is you only have so many years on this earth, in this body, and no matter what your belief, I think most of us agree with that, right? And so just kind of using that and saying, do I want to have a higher quality of life, or do I want everything to be a transaction? So that's been really important. And also then knowing if you have leverage, knowing what your leverage is. So when I go into a room, like I've raised $20 million, I've also earned several $1,000,000 in revenue over the past 5 years. And I went from being homeless to that, and every time I walk into a negotiation or into a room, I couple things. I'm ready to fail. I'm ready for it not to work, and I have a B plan or a C plan. I'm okay with it not working out. Like if you have that true feeling, it's okay if it doesn't work out. That's really helpful. And the other thing is not like knowing what my leverage is in the situation. And sometimes knowing that you have zero leverage becomes leverage, because you know how to talk to the person, you know what they may say to you, you may be able to think ahead. So there's a ton of stuff that goes into having confidence in these rooms. It also helps, having the information that we talked about earlier, like becoming the asset, becoming money. That also helped me get over 37 years of stage fright. It was one of the major pieces of getting over stage fright. I used to have incredibly bad stage fright. And one of the ways I was able to conquer it was just having more information, just knowing my stuff more.
And would you say having that information, did that help you get over the fear of rejection, or how did you get to a point where you were just fine going up and putting yourself out there and asking and not letting the fear of a no or rejection stop you or make you hesitant?
I have to say that I have, since I was young, I haven't had a big fear of rejection. It's interesting to me because I've rarely had money, and I rarely had the right clothes, and my hair was never on point, but I was very confident. I had this confidence of like, we're all human and it's okay that I'm here. I'm not taking up too much space and that type of thing. I mean, I think in more personal relationships, I probably had more trouble, but in professional relationships, I just don't think that there's a room that I shouldn't be allowed in. And I don't think that any of us are relegated to one part of the country or one part of the room, and you get this piece and this other person gets this piece. So I not only have my own confidence of what I'm capable of and what I have to bring to the table, but I also know that as a group, there's so many of us, so many women, so many people of color, so many LGBTQ people, all of us in these different groups that I identify with, that we are all valuable and we are all worthy of being in that room. So I never go into a room quite alone. I always feel like the odds are that this thing is not going to work in my favor, whatever it may be. I had to reach out to 100 production and tour managers to get one gig, because the odds are going to be, you're going to get more no's than yeses. But if you can tap into not only your own worth and that you're supposed to be there, but like sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's much easier to say, wait a second, we're all supposed to, like there's a group that I'm batting for as well, not just myself.
Right. So like one of the common threads, as we have this conversation is you also see this in the book. You are able to look at a lot of things or experiences, and whether it's in your childhood or in the early years, and look at the ways in which you could utilize the skills that you gain from those to do what you're doing now. So I would love to talk about that. And it goes back to the point about, being a creative. A lot of creatives are multi-hyphenate, who love having their hands dipped in many pots. And there are people who might give up because a project failed or run out of steam because a project failed. But you had a lot of those experiences, but you were able to use the lessons learned, and what you're doing now, it's successful, but it sits on top of those. So what are, some of the key things that you were able to utilize from projects or experiences that might not have, become wildly successful? Like how did it help you with everything that you're doing with Backstage Capital?
Yeah, at the time when those things happen, they can be devastating, and they can feel like, man, I spent all this time, all this effort, and what is next? What could possibly be? What do I have to offer next? But looking back on so many of those things, they have absolutely helped me with my current success. I've never been in a better position than I am today. And every day I'm reminded of why, so like there's a certain muscles that are being flexed from things that I did before. So just working in touring, right? For every one gig I got that was like a month long, there were 20 that I didn't get. And I was struggling and trying to make it work. But I learned so much about like you said, handling rejection. I learned about the odds and the math of it all, and that really has helped me. I also learned about working with people from all walks of life and all cultures and all agendas and ages and skill sets and education, everything, all at once while moving. So I kind of look at venture as kind of like the easier of the two. I mean, if you can do what I did it and what the teams did, touring, you're moving anywhere from 5 to 75 people across the country or across the world almost daily, and you're taking on a new challenge every single day. No 2 days are the same, and you're doing all of that with the finesse and a certain level of quality, as if it's the only time you're playing that arena. And so I learned so much about consistency, working with so many different types of people, having the consistency while also being flexible. I mean, so much I learned from that. Then I learned from my magazine. I mean, it was one of the best times in my life and one of the worst times. It was very, very, very difficult to lose that magazine at the time. In 2008 is when I lost it. But I learned so much about what a founder is going through. So now we have, when I look at companies to invest in, it helps me decide. When I look at founders, it helps me understand what they're going through. It helps me help them throughout the process. There are almost 200 companies and maybe 350 or so founders in those companies that I can take a call any day of the week and talk to them, not from a perch, not from somewhere like, I have this money, we gave you money and you have to do this, but from someone who had to at the grocery store put certain number of grapes from the vine, in order to afford it, So there's like this relatability that is not only helpful, but sets Backstage apart in so many situations where we win the deal. And that happens over and over again. And there are just so many different things that you think at the moment that it's just a devastating blow. And then you learn, wow, it actually made me a better something. It made me a better leader, or a better, someone who can empathize more, someone who can make a better decisions because of it.
Yeah, and on that note as well, speaking of multi-hyphenates, you still are a multi-hyphenate. So you're a VC, but you're still an entrepreneur, you're a podcaster, you're an author. Can you give advice to the multi-hyphenate who is trying to figure out how to keep it together and to streamline and monetize like themselves and their gifts, but in a way that doesn't burn them out and drive them crazy, trying to, yeah.
I can and I will. I'm a multi-hyphenate for sure. And I have to say, I have a team. So a lot of times I try to make sure people understand, don't compare yourself to other people because you may not know what kind of support they have and you may be trying to keep up with that. I have a team that helps me. I definitely take credit for a lot of the work and a lot of the vision, but I have a team that supports that. So what I'll say is, I think about my wife, Anna. She's a multi-hyphenate. She's a creative. She's pure creative, right? It's just, there's always music being created from her studio. There's always she's a composer, she's an actress, she's a writer, she's a director, she's all these different things. And when I talk to her, it's a great look into an artist because she's always wondering if she did her best. She's always wondering if she could give more. She's always wondering if she's tapped out of that specific talent. And I'm just in awe the whole time saying, so I imagine it's probably the same for a lot of people here where it's just some of that angst, I think, is part of being an artist. And so it's almost needed a little bit for your art. But please do not mistake your, Wednesday that you couldn't produce something for you being tapped out. It's about the output, in my opinion. It's not about the day to day, how many hours you put into something, because artists are they're built in a different way. I think it's not, and even when I'm talking to founders or to myself or to my team, I'm not micromanaging the hours and the minutes they're putting into work. I care about the outcome of what happens. This is what I want to happen in a month. I want to see it on the other side. Don't beat yourself up because you didn't work 10 hours today to make that happen. If you work 2 hours today and you made the same thing happen, to me, that's a win. That's a big win. So you're not always meant to have inspiration and to be ready to be an artist every single day of the week on command. And I think it's about like really giving yourself a break and thinking about what you have done. Like look back in the last year and just see, are there things that you can say that you accomplished? Are there is there an outcome? Is there a piece of art that you produced in some way, one medium or another? Or is there some project you worked on? And look at it more like that and say, well, who am I comparing myself to? Why am I beating myself up? Can everybody do this? No, I can tell you I can't probably. I can't do what you do. So I really do think it bears repeating that you shouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, it was great that in the book you talked about, always like taking a day
Mm-hmm.
where you don't consume yourself with too many things because that, what's seen as downtime, it's important to help you strengthen the muscles that you gain and be able to have clarity to move forward or to make a decision.
100%. My team will tell you, my wife will tell you, the days where I'm laying on the couch staring at the ceiling are the days where I have monumental ideas that get executed. I mean, things that our $5 million raise that we did in just a few days this year. I came up with that while like staring at a wall, And if I had cared that somebody was walking by and saying I wasn't actively working, they don't know what I'm thinking. They don't know what you're thinking. And I needed that time away from the day-to-day grind in order to be inspired. That's kind of my own art, is being inspired about what is next. I'm painting the future that I want to see, and I can't do that if I'm in front of a computer every single day of the week, worried about somebody caring about the time I've put in.
Right. And a segue off of that, you mentioned the $5 million raise. Even though a lot of our audience may not be building companies that are, traditionally fit for venture funding, you just did something in March that was record breaking. And, can you tell us a bit about the Republic crowdfunding accomplishment that you had, and also just talk about the importance of, as an entrepreneur, being able to think outside the box and find alternative ways of funding or fueling your platform or your company or what you're building?
Yeah, so just as foundation, there used to be a rule that publicly you could raise up to $1,070,000 with any type of investor who was 18 plus in the United States, putting in as little as $50 or $100. And in the world of investment, that's a smaller amount. So there was this rule that you could do that, and that was from the Jobs Act of 2012, which was really cool. But this year, that maximum went up to 5 million. And there are not a lot of companies who can raise $5 million from the crowd. You have to have a lot of prep for that and have an audience and things like that. But at the same time that was happening and that was changing and very interesting, we were looking at Backstage last year and saying, there's what we raise money to invest in other companies, but we also raise money for our own operations to do all of the work that we do, this impactful work. And it was harder and harder to raise that type of money from big institutions who don't quite get Backstage yet. They don't see, like a lot of people see the vision, but it's hard for them to underwrite just because it's not traditional. So we were seeing both of those things happening at once. I'd never seen a fund go out and raise money from the crowd. And we weren't raising for a fund, we were raising for our operation. So it was very, very new. So I spent about 2 or 3 months working with my legal team at Backstage, our legal outsource, and working with the Republic.co founders and teams on let's just create a new model for funds. It's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be for every fund. It's not going to work for everyone. But we want to be like the downside of quote unquote was that we're going to have to be so transparent and we're going to have like 7,000 people knowing our business. And to me, that was an upside. I was like, that's great. Like that means that instead of just me and our team making money, if we make money in the future, we get to share that nominally with 7,000 people. And to me, that was like a win-win all around because you want to have people really excited about the companies that we're invested in. So anyway, we went out and we did it. We made it work legally. It took a lot of time and effort and like kind of 3D chess or 5D chess. And we did it. And we were the first fund to raise from the crowd for operations. And now there are other funds who are like using our raise as a blueprint for their own raise. Now, that's kind of a rare case. How it applies to this crowd and to most people is that a company can do that. And it may not be that you raise 5 million and you may not be able to raise now, but eventually, if you have enough customers, if you have enough kind of groundswell, you do not necessarily have to go to venture capital now. And you didn't before, but you really don't now because the venture capitalists are going to be trying to give you the same 5 million. And that's just one group of people who have a say in your company. And so it just really opened up a lot. It made people more inspired than anything, right? It's not exactly like every single person's going to go out and do a Reg CF now. We're at a regulation crowd fund. But it just opened up more potential of, wait a second, there's not just one or two ways here. There are different paths. So I'm a big fan of bootstrapping. I'm a big fan of multiple revenue streams based on the same talent. So there's like refurbishing and regrouping and seeing how you can, if you're an author, you can have your book, and there's many ways to do that, indie or through the traditional ways. You can also turn the book into a podcast and sell advertising or go to a Patreon type of place and have people donating to you. You can also start an online course, or you could go and teach in person and have a workshop, and it's all from the same materials. And you can do that multiple times and multiple topics, all from you. And that all goes back all the way back to the beginning of this conversation about learning as much as you can about your craft, your topic, your lane. And I don't like when people tell me to stay in my lane, but what I say now is like, I'm in my lane, they're just stacked lanes. I'm not just what you need me to be. And I think everybody has that potential.
Amazing. All right, so I want to give the audience some time to ask questions, but before we jump to that, this is a question that I love asking everyone. What are you most proud of as an entrepreneur?
I'm most proud that there are so many people who at one time felt underrepresented, underestimated, overlooked, who come to me every single day of my life now, in one medium or another, to tell me that they now feel like they're worthy. They feel like they can go do whatever they want to do. They can start a company, they can become an investor, they can do all these things that have been there for them the whole time. And it's because I dared to speak up and I dared to go after what I thought was right, even though so many people were laughing at me or telling me I couldn't do it just a few years ago. And I just think I'll always be proud of that. I will never kind of shrink myself and say, oh, it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was difficult, and it still is. And so because it's so worth it. It's so, so worth it at that point.
All right. So what are some things or the top things that you would like to see change in the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a whole, like in the next 5 years to come?
I want, the big picture would be that backstage capital is obsolete and no longer needed because you don't have an underrepresentation of founders, right? Like the idea would be to put ourselves out of business. But really it's just about walking into rooms, going into spaces virtually or in person, and the rooms are representative of the demographics in that space. And we no longer have to separate and with so much effort just to be equal. That would be a really beautiful thing in life, and it would be really, really great in the startup ecosystem in the investing world.
Amazing. All right. So one more question for me. So you being an entrepreneur yourself and building this community of entrepreneurs, what are the common traits that you've observed in entrepreneurs who become successful? And this goes across the board, whether it's entrepreneur building a high growth tech company or a creative building a lifestyle business. What are some of the top traits that you've seen that set people up for success?
Number one, curiosity. Like number one, and I feel that in myself. I'm insatiably curious, and I think the moment that I don't feel like asking why or what is when I've lost it. It's like, oh, I gotta find something else that drives me. Because it's not only like, so I see it in founders. I see it when someone is kind of curious about how they can be better, how they can be stronger, how they can be more nimble, how all of those things, like there, you can see that active curiosity, and it's usually in the most brilliant minds that you see that. And I also have seen it in people who are like the after picture, the ones who are just already millionaires, billionaires, if that's how they define success, or other ways. If you think about Oprah Winfrey, she's so curious. You know what I mean? She's always, yes, she's an interviewer, but there's a reason she's so good at it. And she's always thinking of things and always trying to figure people out. And even her new book is about like, what happened to you, right? It's a question. And I think that's what made her so successful. I think that for so many people who say that they have to read every day or they have to learn every day, I have to learn every day. I don't feel fulfilled that day. I feel like it's a wasted day, and I don't like that, right? So I have to learn. So I think that with an open-mindedness, whenever I see someone who I'm like, you're getting in your own way, it's because they've already figured everything out. There's nothing more to learn. They know everything. And where's the collaboration in that? What is the incentive for your employees, for vendors to collaborate with you, for investors to collaborate with you, and even for your customers, if you have it all figured out and there's nowhere else for you to go? And so many people think that that's a sign of strength. And to me, it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of you're overcompensating. It's never true, really. And you don't have a self-awareness to know that. And so someone who has a curious mind, who has an open mind, and someone who, who truly sees a future. They see a future. Don't know if it's going to be the way that they see it, but they see it. So this vision to me is what draws me in a founder. If someone is just, you're transported to what the world will look like in 5 or 10 years, simply because of how they talk to you or what they're working on. They don't have to be charismatic. They don't have to be, the most outgoing person. I don't care about that. But if they can tell me in some way or another, either through words or through the product they're using or creating, what they want the world to look like in a decade or further, that is a compelling case. And it's something that someone who has a curious mind like myself wants to gravitate towards.
All right. Well, Arlan, thank you so much for dropping all of those gems for us. Before I cut to Q&A, I just want to fill the audience in on how you all can get a copy of Arlan's book, It's About Damn Time, where in this book, you'll learn a lot more. Like what you got is a sample of the lessons that you can learn here from Arlan's journey. She goes into a lot of details about strategies, lessons she's learned, and how that's helped her to build and fuel what she's currently doing. So right now, if you look in the chat, we are going to drop a link where you can go to sign up for the network. So in order to sign up for the book, you have to be a Parsons Entrepreneur Academy network member. So sign up for the network. It's open, it's free to sign up. Once you're in, at the very top of that page, you will see the link to sign up for the book. So the first 50 Entrepreneur Academy network members who are US based to sign up, you'll be eligible to receive a copy of the book. So sign up. We'll be reaching out to the first 50 people who sign up via email by June 22nd.
That's amazing. I love that. Not a lot of people do that, y'all. I would jump on it. I'm serious. And I don't comment on it very often, but that's really cool.
All right. So look out for the link, everyone. And now we'll go to Q&A. So Arlan, once the questions pop up, I'll read them off for you and
okay,
go from there. All right. So first question. As a creative, I keep my interest in a wide range. I feel I could launch a lot of different businesses. How do you think we find the right one?
Well, as a creative, that's what your mind is meant to do, is to have all kinds of interests. And I can tell you, I've had so many interests since I was a kid, like all at once. And I'm not going to be the one to tell you to only focus on one, because I don't. But I will say that focus really does help. And so I tend to say, follow what is the most fulfilling for you. What is the thing that you can't stop thinking about? What is that question that you have to have answered? And you're eventually, if you're successful with one thing, or even if you get some traction with one thing, you'll be able to work on the second and the third and the fourth, like I have been able to. But if you try to do all of them at once, all of your attention and all of your resources and all of the goodwill that you have from different people is going to be spread out too thin, and none of them may work out. So I would say start with the one that you feel like you have the greatest toehold on. What do you know the most about? What do you want to learn the most from? Where do you have that foundation to that springboard? And maybe also think about your network. Think about which thing do I have the most people I can start reaching out to today to collaborate? Because I said there's no such thing as being self-made. All of it's going to take teamwork, or a team or a group of people working, collaborating. But ultimately, if I had to choose right now and they said, okay, you can only do one thing, I would just say, what is the thing that just fills me up? What is the thing that I cannot get out of my head? And it would be, I have an answer to that. It would be just working only on Backstage Capital, you know? And so that may change over time. And I think a check-in every once in a while is really important too, because it is okay to pivot. It's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to be in different seasons.
I have a similar question. How to prioritize projects and navigate transitioning from creative inspiration to concrete plans. What to work on first, how much time to devote where. All right, so I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, we can focus on.
That was the same answer, but also just kind of how to get started is part of your process really is in the research and development. So I wouldn't say, don't spend 20 years researching and developing. You're never going to get there, right? You have to put your one foot in front of the other. You have to kind of set yourself on a path. If you're good at that self-motivation, cool. If you know you're not, try to work with somebody else, maybe a co-founder or somebody. If you're not doing an actual company, maybe it's just someone who's a collaborator who does have that motivation side to them, and you have more of the creative side. But a lot of people skip the research and development part. They go right to, well, I think it's a great idea. I love it. And a couple of my family members think it's awesome. So I'm just going to go straight to, I'm going to raise money. I'm going to put it online and it's going to be great. And they skip the part where they went out without having any money. Don't worry about that part. They went out to, let's say, 100 potential customers, and they talked to them and they asked them, would you buy something like this? Would you become part of a membership or something like this? Would you come to my course? Would you come to this concert? Do you like this sampling? That sort of thing. And taking in the information and having a survey and giving people a reason. Maybe you're offering something really simple but helpful for free, and in exchange they just have to fill out a survey, and you have that data in front of you. But to skip that part is really detrimental. You're going to waste a lot of time and money if you don't have that figured out, because maybe in that research you learn, oh, if I tweak this one thing, actually it's going to be more beneficial. Maybe I thought my thesis was that everybody needs this certain type of toothbrush, but now that I've interviewed 100 or so people, I understand that they care more about what the color is and the bristles, just things like that, and then acting on it. So that's where you start. You start by figuring out what you're going to do, and at least having an idea. And then you get into, let me talk to my customer first. Before I had a dime, I was talking to founders. Founders are my customer, right? I was talking to founders. What do you need? Am I right about this? Am I right to say that you have a hard time getting into rooms? Am I right to say that in addition to capital, you need these other 3 resources? And if I hadn't been doing that, when the money came to me, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I would have wasted it.
What's your advice for early stage entrepreneurs to get the first group of paying customers to sign up?
Well, going back to what I just said, is doing a lot of the right research and development so that you have this great asset in the people that you're talking to. So these are potential customers. They may not become your customers because some of them may not like what you're doing. But I think it's all about, this is the right question to ask. I love this question over how do I raise money? Because you should be focusing on your potential customers and your true customers before you're worrying about what kind of company an investor wants. I think, it's a simple thing. And probably if you were in person, you'd probably hit me, but it's make a great product, make a great service, have something that people really want, that people can really use, and that they can use it more than once. They need it more than one time. Don't be afraid of offering something for free that's a sampling or an understanding. So you have to earn that trust. You have to earn the right to sell to people. There are plenty of people you can talk to about sales and about marketing and learn from. I'm sure in this academy, but ultimately, I think it has to come from a place of the highest quality, and do they keep coming back?
What should an entrepreneur focus on when establishing some pre-seed metrics? We need an example. We need to raise dollars now to proceed with the business, but we're still a little early.
Yeah, I think they're all related. So it's when I'm looking at a company that's pre-revenue, which we do a lot. I mean, we're in the pre-seed stage and the seed stage. So sometimes the company is pre-revenue. I'm saying, okay, what does your mailing list look like? What are the people who are waiting on the waiting list? What do they look like? Are they in the thousands or in the dozens? Are there people waiting? If only you had the money to produce the product, they're waiting in the wings, just ready for it. And that again goes back to this research. There's MVPs, minimum viable product, which is you don't necessarily have the big thing yet. You don't have the website up yet, or you don't have the product yet, but you have something that kind of mirrors what it will be, or is a sampling of what it will be, and you have that out in market. And you don't need money for everything. I will never be able to honestly take the excuse of I didn't do something because I didn't have the money, because you're talking to someone who slept on the floor of the San Francisco airport and raised a venture fund. So I need money part, I didn't just wait. I didn't wait for opportunity. I went out and got it. So the metrics are like, are people already talking about it? Are they already willing to be on a waiting list? Go even further. Is that a waiting list? Do you have a confidence in your product or your service or whatever you're offering that you have somebody putting a deposit down? Do you have, back in the day or even recently, people would say, oh, if you did a Kickstarter, if you did a Reg CF, for equity raising on the crowd, it's because you couldn't raise anywhere else. Now they say that's actually a good marker indicator for me that you can get people to care about a product that doesn't even exist yet. So do you have any kind of traction that shows that people care enough about what you're doing to, on social, are they saying, hey, when are you coming out? Like, I've been on the waiting list for 3 months. Are they knocking down your door? That's one thing. And also just the other work that you've done towards it. So like, did you find a co-founder, or did you find someone who said, yeah, I'll help you with the website in exchange for a small amount of equity? Sure. What other things were you able to do that didn't involve money? Your negotiation skills, the ability to make people excited about what you're working on, the ability to bring on collaborators and I mean, that was a really big motivation for some of my investors early on, because I didn't have anything to show for it. I didn't have any traction because I couldn't invest already. So I didn't have investments to show them. But what they were really excited that, like, you have all these people who are willing to help you. How did you do that? Well, I just every day talked to different people, told them what I was doing, and said, hey, the moment I have money, we're gonna be moving. But before then, I just need help with like a pitch deck. Can you help me create a pitch deck? And like the ability to attract help is really, really impressive to a lot of investors.
Yeah, there was a part in your book where you talked about getting free legal services for a year because of an introduction.
Yeah, and that person's not going to take me for a year, just anybody, right? But because I had all these other people I could have them reach out to, I still didn't have any money, but I had built the network. So everything I've set up until this point, I'm not just saying it, I lived it, right? And it all connects in some way.
All right. Do you have any advice on how to leverage social to start and develop a business? Also, how do you make the switch from enjoying your content?
From them enjoying it.
From people, I guess, people enjoying your content to them wanting to buy something from you.
I'm not an expert on social. I get a lot of help from other people, and I tend to be pretty stubborn, and I like to keep things really authentic and natural, and I post things that aren't perfectly done. So I'm not going to be the person to come to for like just straight up social marketing advice. One piece of advice that I've heard that I think is actually really sound is actually from Gary Vaynerchuk. And obviously, he's a polarizing person. If you know him, you either think he's like a used car salesman type, or you think he's brilliant. I find him, he's a friend of mine. I find him to be quite interesting and quite profound. And then also sometimes I yell at him for stuff, and he knows that too. But he said to think of your Instagram or your TikTok or wherever as a 30-minute television show, and you don't want 30 minutes of ads. You want content, 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 and then a break for ads, and then content, 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 a break for ads. And if you think about that literally but if you think about, is your social just always at in someone's face, buy this thing or like me or this, or are you also letting them get to know you better and then throwing things in there? And I think that's pretty cool the way that he put it. It's very easy to apply.
I aspire to start my own VC fund focusing on BIPOC, LGBTQ, and founders with disabilities. What would you do differently if you had to recreate that stage capital?
Hmm. I wouldn't do a lot differently, to be honest with you, even though it has been a long road, because I do feel like I feel a great deal of integrity and a great deal of like I've done pretty much the best job I could do under the circumstances. But I would say if I had to change anything, it would be getting to the point where I said no to things, or I said like have this full on confidence much faster. Before I was under the impression that if only people with means knew about what I was doing, they're going to invest. Like this is so easy to understand. They're going to invest and they want to. And then I've been kind of, given a reality check over the years of it's not the case. A lot of people are super comfortable and and rich people don't have, they have a different calendar than the rest of us, like it's, I guess, yeah, they have a different calendar. And so just sort of not counting on outside forces for as long and just really going all in on maybe this is going to look weird to people. Maybe this is going to be different. Maybe people are going to get scared because my risk tolerance is super high. I don't care. I'm going to do what I think is right, and I'm going to do no harm, and that's what we're going to go for. So just getting to that clarity just slightly faster.
All right, so we're getting close to 6 p.m. Eastern time, so Arlan has to go. So we're going to take one more question. How to protect the space inside oneself in order to craft. I feel like I'm still struggling to believe in my creativity.
Mm-hmm. I'm just a firm believer in protecting that space. This is odd and out of left field, but I just thought about it. I just watched the Willow Smith interview with Paris Jackson that just came out this week. It's really good. I would just suggest you watch it at any age. They're both young enough to be my daughters, so it's a little trippy, but it's very good. It's about this, especially for creatives, both of them being that. I'm just a big believer in setting boundaries for yourself. Like even now, I need to go because I speak a lot and my voice is going to go out soon. And I need to go watch General Hospital and I need to watch Maddow and I need to do these things for myself so I can give 200% that I do every other hour of the day. So just kind of really valuing your space, your time, your process, what you need over almost anything else. Again, it's a do no harm feel, right? You're not going to put anybody else down in order for you to win. But as long as you're in that mindset, it's okay to say no to people. It's okay to say, I'm not going to do that thing, even if that's going to disappoint you. Because why disappoint yourself instead? Why do that? There's no good reason. And ultimately, why you're doing it. You know that it's because what you have to give to the world is worth it. It's worth some people not getting it right now. So I just stand firm in that. Remind yourself of that as much as you can. Have somebody else who's like an accountability partner who can help you surround yourself with that type of person who is not always saying, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you go to this party? Who's more like, hey, that's great that you're taking time off. Awesome. They exist and gravitate towards them.
Self-care. All right, protect your space. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Arlan, for joining us at the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy and for sharing your inspiring story There are a lot of lessons learned today, and I hope you all enjoyed it for tuning in. Please, if you did not get the link before, look in the chat and sign up for the network for the chance to get a copy of It's About Damn Time. The first 50 US-based Parsons Entrepreneur Academy Network members who sign up will win, and we will notify you via email by June 22nd. All right, thank you everyone for joining. Hope to see you at future Entrepreneur Academy events. And thank you again so much, Arlan. It was a pleasure chatting with you and having you on the network.
Thanks, everybody. I'll see you online.